The silence of space was broken by a shimmer that no human telescope had ever expected to see. Slowly, deliberately, enormous ships glided into the Sol system, their sleek black hulls reflecting distant starlight. Each vessel was angular, with edges so sharp that light seemed to bend around them, as if space itself avoided touching their surfaces. Humans on Earth had no idea what was approaching. Across the galaxy, however, the species known as the Selenari were both revered and feared for a single reason: their interrogations. Commander Veilrix, the leader of the Selenari fleet, was a being unlike any other in the known universe. His translucent skin, through which pulsed ever-changing patterns of color, reflected his thoughts as clearly as words ever could. In the quiet command chamber of the lead ship, Veilrix watched Earth's data streams as if reading a primitive book. Every flicker of information made his many-faceted eyes glow with interest. "This world," Veilrix whispered, his voice a soft hum vibrating through the metallic chamber, "is curious. So much chaos. So much potential." Beside him, Lieutenant Zerla adjusted her antennae, a nervous gesture among the Selenari, for it indicated uncertainty. "Commander, I've begun scanning their communications networks. Human civilization is extensive but fragmented. Their history is messy. You might find the records incomplete, inaccurate." Veilrix's gaze sharpened. "Inaccuracy is irrelevant. I want it all. Every record of their past, every tale of conquest and failure, every file, every transcript. History shapes the future. If we are to understand humans, we must see everything." Zerla's antennae twitched in agreement, but her inner sensors, designed to detect emotional instability in others, detected something unexpected: excitement. Veilrix was excited. "Yes, Commander," she said cautiously. "We will begin the download immediately, but it may take decades of processing time." Veilrix smiled, or at least, the closest approximation of a smile his species was capable of. "Then we will wait. Humans are a patient species, or so I hope." Far below, on Earth, satellites and observatories began picking up anomalies in the solar system. The Selenari vessels were undetectable to the untrained eye, but subtle gravitational distortions and faint electromagnetic disturbances triggered the curiosity of astronomers. People began speculating. Was it a comet? A rogue asteroid? By the time humanity realized what had arrived, the Selenari had already established an orbital station, hidden in the shadow of the moon, monitoring Earth's every signal with surgical precision. Within the station, Veilrix activated the Central Archive interface, a massive holographic projection of Earth's data streams. The files poured in, records of ancient civilizations, wars, technological breakthroughs, and the countless stories humans had left behind in writing, audio, and video form. It was overwhelming even for the Selenari, whose brains were designed to process unimaginable volumes of data. Zerla hovered near the interface, her three antennae quivering as the streams of human history danced before them. "Commander, this is chaos. Their history is a tangle of triumph and failure, cooperation and betrayal. I do not know if our systems can make sense of it all." Veilrix's skin flickered a deep shade of indigo, a sign of deep thought in Selenari communication. "Precisely why we must process it. Every species has a pattern. Every species can be predicted, until we reach humans. Then we see anomalies." The first anomaly was subtle. The Selenari noticed that humans, when faced with catastrophe, did not collapse. Entire civilizations had fallen, plagues, wars, environmental disasters, but humanity endured, adapted, rebuilt. While most species the Selenari had studied would have crumbled under such pressure, humans thrived. They were resilient beyond all known calculation. "Look at this," Zerla said, pulling up a file from the first millennium. Images of vast pyramids rising from the desert sands, records of empires that stretched across continents, all built by humans against overwhelming odds. They are relentless. Even when their rulers fail, even when famine strikes, they endure. Veilrix's many eyes scanned the images, absorbing the data at speeds beyond comprehension. "Yes, they are dangerous," he murmured. "Not dangerous in the physical sense. Not in the sense of armies or weapons, but in spirit. They refuse to yield. They do not obey probability." The Selenari, who had conquered worlds through intimidation, technology, and psychological mastery, had never encountered a species whose defining trait was stubborn resilience. Their interrogators had been trained to break the will of entire populations with simulations, manipulations, and endless pressure. But humans were different. Veilrix leaned closer to the interface, studying a digital reconstruction of the Library of Alexandria. Flames devoured the vast collection of human knowledge centuries ago, yet pieces of it survived in scattered fragments. The Selenari's advanced algorithms should have easily predicted human collapse after such a loss. Yet humanity rebuilt libraries, preserved knowledge, and continued to innovate as though nothing had been lost. Zerla's antennae twitched rapidly. Commander, their pattern is paradoxical. Each catastrophe strengthens them. Each failure teaches them. Each loss becomes a foundation for greater achievements. I do not understand how this is possible. Veilrix remained silent for a long moment, processing the revelation. His skin pulsed a brilliant white, the Selenari equivalent of astonishment. We assumed intelligence alone defined a species' strength, he admitted. But humans, their strength lies in persistence, in adaptation, in willpower. We are in uncharted territory. As Earth rotated below them, oblivious to the colossal fleet in orbit, Veilrix issued his next command. Zerla, continue the download. Every record, every legend, every artifact. We will understand them even if it takes centuries. Humans are intriguing. And thus began the Selenari's observation, the first step in what they thought would be an easy conquest of a primitive species. They did not yet know that their own arrogance would be their undoing. For the first time in millennia, the Selenari faced uncertainty. The kind of uncertainty that humans had lived with and thrived under every single day of their chaotic history. And far below, humanity continued, unaware, building their cities, dreaming their dreams, and writing the next chapters of their extraordinary story. The Selenari had expected humans to be simple, easily predictable, and manageable. They had assumed that history, when laid bare in the vast streams of data from Earth, would reveal a species bound by logic, limited by circumstance, and vulnerable to intimidation. They were wrong. Commander Veilrix leaned over the central interface, his translucent skin flashing pale gold, a sign of increasing agitation among his kind. The records were pouring in faster than anticipated. Archives from the early civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, through the sprawling empires of Rome and China, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the myriad wars that had shaped the planet. Each dataset revealed something that defied the Selenari's expectations. Zerla, Veilrix hissed, his voice low and tense, focus on their conflicts. Look at their wars. Tell me how they respond to annihilation. Zerla tapped her interface, drawing up detailed records. Commander, they survive. Entire civilizations have fallen, yet humanity continues. Cities burn. Empires collapse. Yet they rise again, often stronger, often smarter. Veilrix's many eyes flickered across the holographic data, scanning timelines with a precision only a Selenari could manage. He paused at the records of the Mongol conquests, the bubonic plague, the world wars of the 20th century. Each time they are tested beyond reason. Each time we would expect submission or extinction. And yet, his skin pulsed a pattern of deep violet, the closest Selenari expression to disbelief. Yet they endure. Zerla's antennas twitched nervously. It is more than endurance, Commander. It is evolution under pressure. Their failures do not destroy them, they shape them. Humans innovate when threatened, they cooperate when cornered, and they fight back when there is nothing left to lose. Veilrix tapped his clawed fingers on the console. Run predictive simulations. Model their response to extreme pressure. Compare to known species across the galaxy. The station hummed as the algorithms churned. Selenari systems, renowned for their computational prowess, attempted to project human behavior under stress. Within moments, every simulation failed. The models collapsed under the sheer unpredictability of human ingenuity. They cannot be calculated, Zerla whispered. Their decisions, they make no sense. In all known species, behavior follows patterns. With humans, every pattern contains exceptions, exceptions that defy logic. Veilrix's skin flickered rapidly, a sign of rising tension. They are dangerous, he admitted aloud, though his voice held more awe than fear. Not in the way of teeth or claws. Not in weapons or fleets. But in their willpower. Their ability to survive, adapt, and overcome. They are anomalies. The Selenari had faced countless species in their interrogations, some violent, some cunning, some technologically superior. All had eventually yielded to logic, coercion, or fear. Humans, however, seemed to exist beyond these constraints. Zerla pulled up another set of files, this time from human scientific archives. Commander, they do not just survive, they create. They build machines, discover medicines, explore stars, communicate across continents. They transform their environment continuously, not merely to survive but to thrive. This level of adaptability is unprecedented. Veilrix leaned closer to the projection, scanning a digital recreation of the Apollo moon landing. Small humans, tiny against the vastness of space, had walked on a world that seemed untouchable. "They are audacious," he murmured. "Even in the face of impossible odds, they dare to dream, to act, to conquer challenges that would crush any other species." And yet, it was not the technological feats alone that struck the Selenari. It was the persistence of spirit. Zerla brought up records of disasters, earthquakes, famines, tsunamis. She highlighted stories of communities rising from the rubble, of children surviving when hope seemed lost, of ordinary people risking everything to save others. "Commander, their compassion, it amplifies their resilience. They protect one another even when there is no immediate benefit. This behavior strengthens them in ways that our models cannot quantify." Veilrix's skin pulsed a muted green. The Selenari had no word for admiration, yet what he felt was remarkably close. "Their history is a weapon against us," he said quietly. "Every story, every catastrophe, every survival, it trains them, sharpens them, makes them unpredictable. We cannot anticipate them. We cannot intimidate them. We cannot break them with logic or fear." The more the Selenari delved into the records, the more the cracks in their confidence grew. They studied human revolutions, where ordinary citizens had overthrown tyrants, and scientific breakthroughs born in tiny labs by individuals against the odds. They examined artists, musicians, and writers who had influenced millions, shaping society without armies or fleets. The more they learned, the more the Selenari realized that their understanding of power and control was obsolete. "Zerla," Veilrix said, his tone unusually grave, "prepare the legends and myths for analysis. Perhaps there is something in their stories, tales of heroes, of gods, of monsters, that will reveal a pattern we can exploit." Zerla hesitated. "Commander, the legends themselves, they reinforce the same traits. Humans are told tales of defiance, ingenuity, sacrifice, and survival from generation to generation. Their culture is built upon stories of resistance, of courage against impossible odds. I do not see how this will make them more predictable." Veilrix's skin shifted a deep shade of purple, signaling contemplation. "Perhaps predictability is irrelevant. Perhaps their greatest strength is their unpredictability." For the first time in recorded Selenari history, the Interrogators faced a species that defied all logic. The files, once thought to be simple records of a primitive species, became a mirror reflecting resilience, creativity, and indomitable will. The Selenari simulations crashed, their calculations failed, and their confidence wavered. "Commander," Zerla said cautiously, her voice tinged with unease, "they are breaking our models. Our entire methodology for understanding civilizations, it is collapsing." Veilrix stared at the streams of human history, his multifaceted eyes narrowing in thought. "No," he said slowly, almost to himself, "we are breaking ourselves. We assumed we could conquer through understanding and control. But humans, they exist beyond understanding. They are unbreakable in ways we have never encountered." The realization settled over the station like a cold wind. The Selenari had come to observe, to study, perhaps even to dominate. Instead, they had encountered something extraordinary. Something they could not predict, control, or contain. Humanity was not merely surviving. Humanity was thriving, and every file, every story, every record was proof of a species whose resilience and spirit could rival the stars themselves. Veilrix closed his claws over the console, his skin now a muted silver, the closest approximation to reflection and awe. "We must proceed carefully," he said finally. "This species cannot be underestimated." And as the orbital station hummed quietly above Earth, the Selenari realized that their first encounter with humanity had changed them. Not through battle, not through diplomacy, but through history itself, the record of countless lives, struggles, and triumphs, preserved across millennia. Humans were not what they had expected. Humans were extraordinary. The Selenari station hovered silently above Earth, yet inside, a storm of data and emotion churned. Commander Veilrix and Lieutenant Zerla had moved beyond mere analysis of human history. Now they were exploring something far more enigmatic: human legends, myths, and stories. What they had expected to be childish tales of primitive imagination instead revealed the core of humanity's unyielding spirit. Zerla activated the cultural archives. "Commander, these files contain the legends humans pass from generation to generation. At first glance, they appear trivial. Myths of heroes, monsters, gods, and great catastrophes. but patterns are emerging. Veilrix leaned closer, his skin flickering a contemplative indigo. Patterns? Yes, Zerla said, projecting a holographic map of overlapping tales from all continents and centuries. Humans idolize defiance. They elevate individuals who act when all hope is lost. They celebrate ingenuity, sacrifice, courage, and resistance. Even in fantasy, they value traits that make them unpredictable, dangerous, and unbreakable. Veilrix's multifaceted eyes reflected the stories as they played across the hologram. A young warrior facing insurmountable odds, a clever inventor outsmarting tyrants, a single individual standing against injustice. Every culture, despite distance and time, shared this underlying theme. Humans defied expectation. They are teaching themselves through stories, Veilrix murmured. Even before they act, they rehearse defiance, courage, and innovation in their myths. Zerla's antennae twitched rapidly. It is as if they anticipate adversity. Every legend, every moral tale, reinforces strategies for survival, adaptation, and cooperation. They are training generations without realizing it. Commander, many of these stories are inspired by real events. Veilrix paused on a file depicting the story of Kaelin Arden, a brilliant scientist whose discoveries saved millions of lives despite political opposition. The holographic projection showed her modest laboratory, surrounded by equipment cobbled together from limited resources. Her determination, her refusal to surrender to bureaucratic or societal pressures, radiated from the digital record. They are persistent, Veilrix said softly. Even individuals can change the course of history. They are not bound by hierarchy or expectation. One human alone can make a difference that cascades across continents and decades. Zerla brought up another projection. Dareth Olin, a leader who had risen from obscurity to rally an oppressed population against a technologically superior regime. His rebellion seemed impossible on paper, yet history recorded success. Notice, Commander, Zerla said, her voice tinged with awe. He did not rely on advanced weapons or vast armies. He relied on strategy, ingenuity, and inspiring others. Humans amplify each other's strengths. They protect one another, they cooperate, they persist. Veilrix's skin pulsed violet, an expression of growing astonishment. They are contagious. One individual's courage spreads to others. It multiplies. Resistance is not solitary, it is systemic. The Selenari had faced many formidable species across countless systems, but none had exhibited this combination of individual initiative and collective resilience. A single threat could topple a world, but not humans. Their strength was embedded in stories, in culture, in memory itself. Commander, Zerla said, bringing up yet another set of legends, humans also celebrate those who act despite fear. Fear is a constant in their lives, war, disease, natural disasters, but they do not let fear dictate inaction. Instead, they rise in spite of it. Their myths glorify courage in adversity, teaching each generation to act even when all hope seems lost. Veilrix felt a strange sensation, one that no Selenari had experienced before. A flicker of unease, or perhaps awe, pulsed through him. It is not their technology, not their strength in numbers, not even their intelligence, it is their spirit. The stories themselves forge a species stronger than any algorithm can predict. Zerla hesitated before activating another archive. Tales of ordinary humans saving entire communities, inventing solutions with nothing but courage and resourcefulness. They saw children devising clever methods to distribute food in famine-stricken regions, villagers devising traps to protect themselves from invading forces, and scholars risking their lives to preserve knowledge from destruction. They are teaching resilience, Zerla said softly, almost to herself. Even in the smallest actions, even in the most ordinary humans, there is defiance, and through it, survival. Veilrix paused at a file showing the story of Leora Thane, a young girl who had devised a system to provide clean water to entire villages, saving thousands of lives, while barely in her teens. One child, Veilrix murmured, can change the fate of many. One human, even a child, can tip the scales of survival in ways unimaginable. It is illogical. But it was precisely this illogical behavior that unnerved the Selenari. They had studied civilizations built on predictability, on obedience, on fear. Humanity was chaotic, unpredictable, and remarkably, utterly effective. They cultivate creativity through struggle, Veilrix continued, eyes scanning countless projections at once. Every failure, every threat, every catastrophe strengthens them. Their legends, their myths, their stories, they do not merely entertain, they prepare them. Zerla's antennas twitched, reflecting a mix of fear and fascination. Commander, we cannot simulate this. We cannot calculate their response. We cannot control them. They exist beyond the parameters of our knowledge, beyond the constraints of probability. Veilrix exhaled, a low vibration resonating in the chamber. It is as if the universe intended this species to be unpredictable, indomitable, dangerous in ways we never anticipated. 4 hours, the Selenari sat immersed in human legends, watching as countless individuals defied overwhelming odds, inspiring generations. Each story, each myth, each tale of heroism and ingenuity reinforced the same conclusion. Humans were not merely survivors, they were architects of their own destiny, shaping reality with courage, will, and intellect. And yet, Veilrix said finally, his tone almost reverent, they do not know how extraordinary they are. They fight for survival, for justice, for life itself, not for conquest, not for dominance. That is what makes them dangerous. Their strength is intrinsic, not imposed. Their power is in their spirit. Zerla's antennas drooped slightly. Commander, perhaps we have underestimated them. Perhaps the species we came to observe, to study, and perhaps to control, cannot be controlled. Veilrix allowed the thought to settle, his skin pulsing a deep, contemplative indigo. The legends, the myths, the human stories, they had revealed something far more profound than the Selenari had expected. Humanity was not merely alive. Humanity was extraordinary. And for the first time, the Selenari began to feel a flicker of something dangerous to their kind. Uncertainty. Uncertainty that humanity, in its chaos, resilience, and spirit, might be unstoppable. The Selenari had begun their observation with confidence. They had expected to analyze, to classify, to understand humanity in a matter of months. Instead, the sheer weight of human history was breaking their systems, and their minds. Commander Veilrix hovered over the central archive, his many-faceted eyes scanning streams of data at speeds no human could comprehend. Thousands of years of history poured into the station. Wars, revolutions, inventions, explorations, art, music, philosophy. The sheer volume was staggering. Even for the Selenari, whose neural processors could handle exabytes of information per second, the influx was overwhelming. Lieutenant Zerla's antennae quivered nervously as she projected holographic simulations of humanity's most extraordinary achievements. Commander, their innovation rate, it is exponential. Every time they face extinction, famine, or conquest, they respond with invention, adaptation, and cooperation. Every crisis strengthens them. We cannot simulate this, they defy our models. Veilrix's skin pulsed erratically, a sign of cognitive overload among his species. He tapped his claws on the console. Focus on the modern era, he commanded, though his tone lacked its usual precision. The last 2 centuries, industrial, scientific, technological. Surely we can predict them there. Zerla complied, pulling up the archives of the 19th and 20th centuries. Machines roared to life in holographic projections. Steam engines, electricity, airplanes, satellites, computers. Humans mapped the oceans, conquered the skies, and reached for the stars. Yet it was not the machines themselves that shocked the Selenari, it was the context in which humans built them. These achievements, Zerla whispered, antennae twitching, occurred during relentless conflict. Empires rose and fell. Entire populations were devastated. Disease and famine were constant companions. Yet, they created art, literature, and science in abundance. They even thrived under chaos. Our models, they collapse under this data. Veilrix's multifaceted eyes scanned a simulation of the moon landing. Humans, tiny and fragile against the vast void of space, had walked on another world. They are audacious, he muttered. They confront the impossible not because they must, but because they can. The next projection showed the 21st century, global communication networks, breakthroughs in medicine, artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and vast collaborative projects spanning continents. Humans had built global societies capable of transmitting knowledge instantly, yet remained unpredictable, volatile, and creative. Every algorithm the Selenari had developed to predict behavior crashed. Every simulation produced contradictions. Every model of human motivation failed. They cannot be calculated, Zerla said, her antennae drooping. Every prediction produces errors. Every scenario shows anomalies. Humans are inconsistent, chaotic, brilliant. Veilrix leaned over the central console, his skin flickering a muted green. It is not mere intelligence, he murmured. They are alive in ways we cannot quantify. Every failure, Every loss, every catastrophe strengthens them rather than weakening them. Their history is a weapon. Zerla hesitated before projecting another archive. Disasters of the 20th and 21st centuries. Earthquakes, tsunamis, plagues, wars of annihilation. Humans died in the millions, entire cities were destroyed, yet they persisted. They rebuilt faster, smarter, and stronger than before. They thrive under conditions that would annihilate any other species, Zerla said. Even individual humans display remarkable ingenuity. They survive alone in harsh environments, invent new technologies, or lead communities out of despair. Their resilience is systemic. Veilrix tapped the interface, opening a file containing thousands of images. Children devising ingenious solutions in poverty-stricken regions, ordinary citizens thwarting tyranny through clever strategy, scientists working in secret to cure diseases under political oppression. The Selenari had encountered strategic genius before, but never in such chaotic abundance, embedded in a species so unpredictable and undeterred. They are contagious, Veilrix said slowly. One individual's courage spreads to others. One act of innovation creates waves that reshape societies. Resistance multiplies unpredictably. Fear cannot control them, logic cannot bind them. They are unbreakable. Zerla's antennae twitched again. Commander, even when threatened globally, environmentally, politically, militarily, they respond by creating more, not less. Their very existence challenges our assumptions about probability and survival. The models cannot hold. Our systems are failing. Veilrix let out a low vibration of frustration, a sound close to a growl. It is as if history itself is alive, he whispered. Each era teaches them, each failure strengthens them. They are forging resilience not in isolation but collectively, culturally, genetically, and psychologically. They are extraordinary. The Selenari began noticing strange patterns in their own systems. Algorithms designed to process human behavior began producing nonsensical outputs. Neural processors overloaded. Some operators shut down entirely, refusing to analyze the data further. The station, designed for flawless logic and efficiency, was faltering. They are breaking us, Zerla said quietly. Not through violence. Not through diplomacy. Not even through deception. They are breaking us with history. With resilience. With stories. With creation under adversity. With survival. Veilrix leaned back in his observation chair, skin flashing a pale silver, the closest the Selenari had to contemplation or awe. We assumed control could be absolute. We assumed logic could dominate. We assumed we could understand them. We were wrong. Humanity is beyond control, beyond understanding, beyond fear. They are unquantifiable. Zerla projected one final archive for the day, footage of human collaboration across continents, scientists curing diseases, engineers designing infrastructure in disaster zones, children inventing life-saving solutions, activists protecting entire communities from oppression. Every act, large or small, reflected the same pattern. Humans responded to chaos with creativity, courage, and compassion. Veilrix's skin pulsed irregularly. It is not their weapons, not their armies, not their numbers. It is their will, their adaptability, their drive to survive, to protect, to create, to innovate. That is what makes them dangerous. That is what makes them extraordinary. The Selenari had come to observe, to study, and perhaps to conquer a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered something far beyond their comprehension. Humanity was not merely resilient. Humanity was alive in a way that defied logic, prediction, and control. And for the first time, the Selenari began to feel something they had never experienced: uncertainty. The Selenari station hung silently above Earth, but within its halls, a storm of confusion and awe brewed. Commander Veilrix and Lieutenant Zerla had already witnessed centuries of human history, legends, and achievements. Still, as they delved into the archives of the 21st century, something unexpected struck them: humanity's youngest. Veilrix's many-faceted eyes glimmered with curiosity as Zerla projected records of children and teenagers who had made extraordinary impacts on the world. "Commander," Zerla said softly, "it appears their resilience is not only embedded in adults or leaders. It is cultivated from a very young age. Their children are inventors, protectors, and leaders in their own right." Veilrix leaned closer, scanning a file of a young girl named Leora Thane. She was no more than 12 in the archival footage, yet she had engineered a water distribution system that brought clean water to thousands in a drought-stricken region. The simplicity of her design was brilliant, the impact undeniable. One child, Valrix murmured, his skin flickering a strange shade of violet, can change the fate of thousands. One child, alone. Zerla's antennae twitched nervously. Commander, in Selenari society children are educated and trained, yes, but they do not innovate. They follow instructions. They obey hierarchy. Humans are different. Their youth are creative, courageous, and capable of shaping society. They teach each other resilience even before they are adults. Valrix paused on another record. A group of teenagers who had developed software to detect and respond to environmental disasters faster than any government could. Each child's work had saved countless lives, yet they had done so without any expectation of reward or recognition. They do not act for power, Valrix said softly. They act for others. For the community. For life itself. Zerla brought up another projection, this one showing orphan children in a war-torn region, collaborating to rebuild schools, gardens, and libraries. Commander, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief, even when deprived of adult guidance or resources, humans organize, protect one another, and innovate solutions. Their compassion fuels their creativity. Their empathy is functional. It strengthens them. Valrix's skin pulsed irregularly, colors shifting from gold to deep violet, a Selenari sign of deep contemplation and cognitive struggle. They are contagious, he whispered. Even children inspire others. Courage, ingenuity, and empathy spread. One small act amplifies through society. One human, even a child, can trigger waves of resilience that cannot be predicted, contained, or controlled. For hours, the Selenari observed examples of young humans defying impossible odds. Students in impoverished regions creating medical devices from scrap materials. Children designing apps to map disaster zones. Youth-led protests preventing exploitation of entire communities. Every instance reinforced a single, undeniable truth. Humans from their earliest years were trained by circumstance, culture, and instinct to be extraordinary. This is unprecedented, Zerla said, her voice barely above a whisper. Across countless species we have studied, youth are guided, trained, or protected until they mature. They are prepared to follow, not lead. Humans, their young innovate, lead, and protect. They are full participants in survival, not passive observers. Valrix leaned back in his observation chair, claws resting lightly on the console. He stared at a holographic simulation of Leora Thane's water project. Thousands of lives depended on the decisions of a single human child. We assumed predictability could be imposed, Valrix said quietly. We assumed control could be absolute. Yet these children embody the very traits we cannot understand: ingenuity, courage, and empathy. They are the seed of unpredictability, the source of human strength. Zerla nodded, antennae drooping with a strange sense of awe. Commander, it is not just survival that makes them dangerous. It is their ability to protect, to care, to uplift one another. Even in the face of overwhelming threats, they act. They innovate. They endure. And they teach others to do the same. Valrix's eyes flickered across the archives, scanning countless other examples. Young inventors who created life-saving technology in impoverished regions. Teenagers who organized communities to resist oppression. Children who devised ingenious ways to bring hope to war-torn societies. The Selenari had faced countless civilizations, but none had nurtured resilience and ingenuity from such an early age. They are unbreakable, Valrix admitted, his tone low and reverent. Not because of weapons or armies, but because their very culture, their very existence teaches each individual to endure, to innovate, to protect, to lead. Even their youngest cannot be underestimated. Zerla brought up one final projection. A young boy who, at the age of 10, had designed a device to purify polluted water in his village. His work had inspired his peers to create similar innovations in other regions, forming a network of solutions that saved thousands more lives. The system had spread like wildfire, a testament to humanity's innate ability to amplify courage, creativity, and compassion across generations. Valrix's skin shimmered a metallic silver, the closest approximation in Selenari physiology to wonder. We have underestimated them at every level, he whispered. Their adults are formidable, yes, but it is their children who carry the essence of unpredictability, ingenuity, and resilience. Humanity is extraordinary at its core. Zerla, antennae twitching in a mix of fear and admiration, said softly, Commander, they cannot be broken. Not by threats, not by logic, not even by us. Their history, their culture, and their very existence train them to endure, to protect, to innovate. Each generation strengthens the next. They are unstoppable. Veilrix exhaled slowly, a vibration echoing through the chamber. It is clear, he said at last, that humanity's power is not in weapons, fleets, or technology. It is in their spirit, their resilience, their ingenuity, and above all, their ability to care for one another. Even the youngest among them are forces we cannot predict, cannot control, and cannot break. For the first time, the Selenari fully comprehended the magnitude of what they had underestimated. Humanity's strength was not a secret weapon, nor a fleet of warships. It was not calculated strategy or hierarchical obedience. It was history, culture, resilience, and compassion, lessons imparted from generation to generation, from the youngest child to the oldest elder. And in that realization the Selenari began to tremble, not physically but in the only way their kind could: uncertainty, awe, and fear. Humanity had shown them that even children could challenge the assumptions of an entire species. That the spirit of one small human could ripple across societies, saving lives, defying logic, and inspiring others. The lesson was undeniable: underestimate humans at your own peril. The Selenari station, once a monument to precision and control, had begun to crumble from within. Not physically but mentally. Their systems, designed to process and predict the behavior of any species in the galaxy, were failing under the unrelenting complexity of human history, ingenuity, and spirit. Commander Veilrix stood at the central console, his skin flickering erratically, colors that in Selenari physiology signified confusion, frustration, and something akin to fear. Lieutenant Zerla hovered nearby, her 3 antennae vibrating nervously as the archives of human history, legends, and innovations streamed faster than their processors could handle. "Commander," Zerla said, her voice trembling in a way that reflected the emotional overload she was experiencing, "our systems, they cannot contain it. Every new file crashes the simulation. Every model fails. They are overwhelming." Veilrix's multifaceted eyes scanned a holographic display of human achievements across millennia. Empires risen and fallen, children inventing life-saving technology, ordinary citizens resisting oppression, scientists curing diseases in the face of bureaucratic resistance. Each file was more astonishing than the last. Each act, each story, undermined the Selenari's assumptions about predictability and control. They cannot be broken," Veilrix murmured almost to himself. "Not through fear, not through logic, not through war. Humans, they endure. They adapt. They rise stronger every time." Zerla projected the latest simulation, a network of global human responses to disasters, political upheaval, and wars. Thousands of individual actions cascaded into a pattern of resilience that no algorithm could predict. Each act of courage inspired another. Each failure became a foundation for triumph. The pattern was chaotic, illogical, and unstoppable. "They are infecting our systems," Zerla said, antennae twitching wildly. "The more we analyze them, the more our processors fail. Commander, they are breaking our algorithms. They are breaking us." Veilrix pressed his claws against the console, trying to maintain focus. "We have always studied species to predict, to control, to dominate. But humans, they defy control. They defy prediction. Every action we anticipate is subverted by creativity, ingenuity, and willpower." The first Selenari operator to encounter this cognitive collapse had simply shut down. Others began to refuse commands, their neural pathways overloaded by the flood of human resilience. Algorithms designed to simulate human decision-making returned errors so profound that the station's central intelligence began questioning its own directives. Veilrix paced slowly, the flicker of colors along his skin signaling agitation and disbelief. "We assumed history could be measured, quantified, analyzed. With humans, it is infinite. A single life, a single choice, a single child's action, ripples across generations and continents. We cannot process it." Zerla's voice dropped further, tinged with awe and terror. "Commander, their legends, their stories, even their failures train them. They are not bound by probability. They are bound only by will, ingenuity, and compassion. Every generation strengthens the next. They evolve faster under pressure than any species we have studied." Veilrix's gaze turned toward the projections of Leora Thane and the countless other children, innovators, and heroes of human history. Even the youngest among them carry the essence of resilience. Each human is a node of unpredictability, a source of creativity and courage that propagates through society. They cannot be contained, cannot be coerced, cannot be defeated by logic or threat. The station itself began to reflect the mental strain of its operators. Displays flickered erratically, holographic projections collapsed and reformed, and command protocols became inconsistent. The Selenari, a species whose confidence was built on mastery of logic and control, were losing their grip. Not because of battle, not because of sabotage, but because of human history. Veilrix's voice, usually sharp and precise, was now almost reverent. We have faced many species. Some with greater strength, some with advanced technology, some with brutal cunning. None have prepared their young to defy the impossible. None have nurtured creativity, resilience, and courage across generations. Humans, they are beyond comprehension. Zerla's antennae twitched uncontrollably. Commander, our own species depends on predictability, hierarchy, and obedience. Humans do not follow these rules. They improvise, they innovate, they inspire. And through it, they are unstoppable. The commander's many-faceted eyes flickered a pale silver, the Selenari equivalent of introspection or awe. Observe this carefully, he said quietly. Notice how every failure, every catastrophe, every threat strengthens them rather than weakens them. This is not resistance, it is evolution. This is not courage, it is an intrinsic force. Zerla brought up a simulation of human responses to global crises in the 21st century. Entire populations had coordinated to respond to natural disasters, disease outbreaks, and political oppression with ingenuity that no centralized authority could predict or control. Commander, she said softly, they are teaching themselves. They are training generations without realizing it. They are perfecting resilience. Veilrix's skin pulsed irregularly, a visual sign of mental strain among his kind. We assumed domination was possible, he whispered, but domination assumes submission. Humans, they do not submit. They adapt, they innovate, and they protect one another. Their history is their shield, their strength, and their weapon. It was then that the realization fully struck both the commander and his lieutenant. They had underestimated humanity at every level. Every file they processed, every story they analyzed, every historical record reinforced the same truth. Humans were extraordinary, unquantifiable, and unbreakable. Zerla's voice trembled as she concluded, Commander, we came to study a primitive species. Instead, we have encountered something extraordinary. They have broken us, not with force, not with cunning, but with history, ingenuity, resilience, and spirit. Humanity is beyond us. Veilrix remained silent for a long moment, staring at the holographic projections of children saving communities, inventors curing disease, and ordinary citizens defying tyranny. His skin shimmered with muted colors, an expression of a rare Selenari emotion, awe mixed with fear. They are not merely survivors, he whispered. They are architects of their own destiny. They are unbreakable. And for the first time in Selenari history, a species realized that the one it sought to dominate had already conquered something far greater than any battlefield: the mind, the spirit, and the impossible. The Selenari had been broken, not by weapons, not by force, not by diplomacy, but by the very essence of humanity. Above the blue and green planet of Earth, the Selenari fleet had grown restless. For months they had observed, analyzed, and attempted to predict the humans below. They had expected chaos, weakness, and submission. Instead, they had encountered something far more formidable, a species that thrived not despite adversity but because of it. Commander Veilrix stood on the observation deck of the lead vessel, the holographic archives of human history streaming around him. His skin pulsed in patterns no Selenari had ever exhibited before, colors of confusion, awe, and something dangerously close to fear. Lieutenant Zerla hovered beside him, her antennae drooping as she reviewed the latest records. Commander, Zerla said softly, we have catalogued centuries of wars, disasters, revolutions, and scientific breakthroughs. We have traced human ingenuity, courage, and compassion from the smallest child to the oldest elder. And yet, our models fail. Every prediction collapses under the weight of their resilience. We cannot control them. We cannot dominate them. We cannot break them. Veilrix let out a low vibration, the Selenari equivalent of a sigh. Observation confirms what we feared. Humans are extraordinary. They are unquantifiable. They are unpredictable. They are unstoppable. They reviewed footage of modern humans. Engineers building bridges after earthquakes, scientists curing deadly diseases, activists protecting communities from tyranny, and children creating inventions that saved thousands. Each image, each story reinforced the same truth. Humanity's strength lay not in weapons or fleets, but in spirit, ingenuity, and compassion. Zerla brought up the final archive, a simple holographic projection of Leora Thane, the girl who had designed a water purification system that saved entire villages. "Commander," she said, voice trembling, "even a child can change the course of thousands. They nurture resilience in one another. They teach, inspire, and innovate. Their history itself is a weapon we cannot comprehend or withstand." Veorix's eyes scanned the projection silently. He remembered their first assumptions, that humans would be primitive, controllable, predictable. Those assumptions now lay shattered. Every human, it seemed, carried the potential to alter the fate of countless others. Their history, culture, and spirit had forged a species that could not be broken, by logic, threat, or force. "It is clear," Veorix said finally, "that humans' power is intrinsic. Not given by fleets, not granted by weapons, not imposed by authority. It is a force that arises naturally from their history, their experiences, and their connections. Each generation strengthens the next. Each individual, even a child, carries the essence of unpredictability and resilience." Zerla's antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, our fleet, our systems, our minds, we cannot process them. We have underestimated a species that should have been primitive. Instead, they have shattered every calculation we have made." Veorix gazed at Earth, seeing the cities, forests, oceans, and the teeming life below. Humanity, blissfully unaware, continued its daily existence. People worked, studied, loved, fought, dreamed. And all the while, their unquantifiable strength grew silently, quietly, across generations. "We have learned a lesson," Veorix said, voice low, reverent. "A species does not need to wield fleets, weapons, or advanced technology to be extraordinary. Humanity has proven that resilience, ingenuity, courage, and compassion are sufficient to defy the expectations of the galaxy. They are beyond comprehension." Zerla projected the last simulation before transmission to the Selenari High Council, the cumulative impact of human history on global survival and progress. The results were staggering. Predictive models crashed. Probability distributions were meaningless. Every conceivable strategy to dominate, coerce, or subjugate humanity failed in theory before it could even be implemented. "They are teaching themselves through history," Zerla said, antennae trembling. "Even disasters, failures, and tragedies become lessons that fortify the next generation. They are unstoppable." Veorix transmitted a single report to the Selenari Council, a message devoid of strategy or command, only observation. "There is a species and soul that cannot be quantified, broken, or contained. We recommend observation only. They are extraordinary." The Council would never have expected such a conclusion. For the Selenari, a species that valued control, prediction, and domination above all else, this was unprecedented. They had learned that some species were shaped by more than power. They were shaped by resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to care for one another. Humanity embodied all three in ways no Selenari technology could measure or manipulate. And so, without fanfare, the Selenari withdrew from Earth's orbit. They left no evidence, no demands, no warnings. Humanity, unaware of how close it had come to scrutiny by a species that would have judged them unfit for survival, continued its ordinary, extraordinary life. Cities grew, discoveries were made, children played, and dreams unfolded. Earth remained itself, unassuming, chaotic, alive. Yet the story of its people, written in countless acts of courage, ingenuity, and compassion, had protected them more than any fleet or weapon ever could. Veorix stood on the observation deck one last time, staring at the planet below. "We came seeking to understand," he said quietly. "We found a species whose history is its shield, whose failures strengthen them, whose spirit cannot be broken. Humanity does not know it, yet it is already victorious." Zerla's antennae twitched in agreement. "They do not need to fight us. They do not need to prove themselves. Their resilience, their ingenuity, their will, is enough. They are already unconquerable." And as the Selenari ships disappeared into the void of space, Earth spun silently beneath the stars, carrying the quiet, unstoppable, extraordinary strength of humanity. The humans never knew they had been tested. They never knew they had faced a species that could have judged them. And yet, without knowing it, through their history, culture, and indomitable spirit, they had already won. History had defended them. Their resilience had protected them. Their ingenuity had preserved them. Humanity had survived, thrived, and remained unconquerable, because that is what humans did. And for the Selenari, the lesson was etched into memory for eternity. Never underestimate a species that has endured, adapted, and thrived through the chaos of its own history.